Here. Okay, now we're recording it. Welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Rachel from Norfolk, Toronto. We got a lot of Toronto, New Jersey. Great. Data Axel, Kara, welcome. Everybody, welcome. Let us know where you're from, and we'll get going in just a second. Fundraising through the chaos. Hopefully, it's not too chaotic for you this morning. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Okay, there we go. We're getting lots of chatter. Thank you, everybody, for Regina from Saskatchewan. Great. Newmarket, Ontario. Turkey and Syria. Way to go. Is that Allah? How do you say your name? A-L-A-A. Allah. Welcome from Turkey and Syria. That's a first for me. So that's nice. Toronto. Yeah, a lot of Toronto. Mm-hmm. Stratford. Thanks. Okay, there we go. Okay, welcome everyone. I think I will get us going. Let me just see if I can share my slides and everything's working. Yes, it is. Oh, good. If I share my screen, does everybody see Raising Money Through the Chaos as this first screen? Stella presents. Does that look good? Okay, let me just first start by thanking everybody for sharing your time with us. Thank you for joining this webinar. And I want to thank my panelists, who you'll meet in just a second, for giving us some of their time and their brain. We thought this was a good topic because it does seem a little chaotic. Fundraisers have a tough time. We're very dependent on the economy. The economy's been a little chaotic. If you're in Canada, there's a postal strike that's going to resume this week. So that's chaotic. So there's just a lot of chaos going on. And I think our job as fundraisers is to kind of fundraise through it. You know, how do we take what's going on in the environment and do the best we can with the tools we've got? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Let me first start off with the panelists. I couldn't bring you a smarter group of people. And so let me just kind of go through each individually and let you know who they are. You're going to hear first, I'm going to start off a little bit. My name's Philip King. I'm the managing director of an agency called Stella, which is the son or daughter of ST, which is a direct response agency founded 40 something years ago in Canada. And my role is to help our clients think through the digital first parts of their strategy and then integrate it to their mail and to their phones and to other parts of their direct response fundraising infrastructure. We've got Jasonea joining us from Boys Town, and I'll let Jasonea do an intro when we get going. We've got Gillian from Scarborough Health Network Foundation. We've got Kyla, Scarborough Health Network Foundation. Graeme is joining us. He's the CEO of Fundraising Direct. He's going to be deep diving on mobile texting because we're starting to see lines now of revenue come through on mobile and texting, which makes us all kind of excited. And funny enough, and I don't want to, actually, I'm not going to say it because Jasonea is going to say it. We've got Erik joining us in a little bit from, he's flying in from Pittsburgh. They've got a company called Avid AI based out of Texas. AI is one of the big topics. Everybody wants us to talk about AI. We're going to talk about AI. So I just wanted to give you an overview. We're going to hear from lots of different types of fundraising professionals, how we're using technology to offset maybe some of the stagnation we're seeing in our direct mail program, maybe some of the stagnation specifically in the acquisition part of that program. What are we using our online tools to do that we can't do in mail, and how do they integrate together? And how do we keep fundraising through this chaos? Special thanks to Graeme and Fundraising Direct and to Erik and Avid for helping sponsor this day. We're looking forward to it, and let's just get going. We thought we'd start off with a tale of two funnels. And this is a presentation that Jasonea, Kyla, and Gillian and I worked up to talk about what I'm seeing in a lot of the organizations we're fortunate to work with. There are different teams focusing on different funnels in the organization. And from my kind of outsider's view looking in, we're not optimizing because as I think about it, it's one big funnel. So let's just kind of dive into this. As I told you, my name's Philip King. I'm managing director of Stella. I've been fundraising for a long time. My first job was 1999. My first fundraising job was 1999, United Way of Greater Toronto. So I started my fundraising life a long time ago. And the whole idea was to help United Way embrace this new thing called the internet and move their workplace fundraising online. And I just thought, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. It's fun work, passionate people, great mission driven. And I get to play with technology at the same time. So let me just start off with a little bit of fun, just to get us going this morning. You sip your coffee, your tea, or whatever you're drinking this morning. I don't know if you know this, but this is a new profile pic for me. And this is not really me. This is AI's view of me. So this is an AI generated profile pic. I fed it some random selfies that I had on my phone, and they're not great selfies. They're reasonable, bunch of selfies. And it said, create a new profile pic for my LinkedIn. And it created this. So we are starting to see the advent of AI. Now, this is kind of a fun, light example of using AI. We'll get into more serious examples about how we can use AI to segment our donor data, to segment our mailings and our email. But if you look on my LinkedIn, my profile pic is AI generated. Now, the new thing my kids want to do, I don't know if you all have started playing with this, is you can feed most of these AI platforms an image and say, turn it into Studio Ghibli. So the kids love when I take their picture now and I send it to ChatGPT and I turn it into Studio Ghibli. So we know that AI is becoming visual. Okay, so AI for a long time was very verbal, like it was chatting with us in words, but now it's really getting into our images. It's getting into our videos, as we'll show you in a little while. It's getting into all types of content. So there's clearly an implication to how we use these tools as fundraisers. And we have to be careful. And I don't know if Jasonea is going to talk about this. There was some email chatter this week when Jasonea and I were working on something. And I think the comment was, this is a little too AI. It looks a little too AI. And so we need to keep AI with adult supervision, obviously, because our brands are one of the most important things that we can protect as fundraisers. We're not shipping a nice pair of new shoes. We're building trust with our audience. So let me get into this story, A Tale of Two Funnels. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. One of the most famous lines from a novel ever written. And I think it kind of describes our time. I think it still holds true today that there are some wonderful, exciting things going on. There are some very stressful things going on all at the same time. And for those of you who don't know, Charles Dickens wrote this. And he was really trying to describe the experience of two different cities at the time. One was London and one was Paris. And it became one of the most read volumes of all times because it spoke to some universal truths that we're going to try to play on a little bit this morning. The storming of the Bastille, you had all this chaos going on in France, where at the same time, you had a very different society in London, England. And so why are we using this Tale of Two Cities as our metaphor for Tale of Two Funnels? When I look at nonprofits, one of my passions in life, I don't know why, it's to look at your Google Analytics account. I love to look at Google Analytics accounts because I can see so much in your data. And what I see in my mind when I'm looking at your Google Analytics data is I see this. This is the best picture I can put in front of you. It's a big funnel, and I've got people coming into the top of your funnel. They're interacting with your content, and then they're making donations at the bottom. And that's generally what I'm looking for in a funnel. Most funnels have leaks in them. Most funnels need help. They need a little more investment at the bottom or the top or the middle. Everybody's funnel is a little bit different. But generally speaking, when I'm using the word funnel, that's what I'm talking about. You could think of this picture as your website in a very simple way, or your websites, or your digital properties, or your direct response fundraising campaign. You choose as we're going through it this morning. To play on this picture of the funnel, just for a second, up at the top of the funnel, the individual has never heard of you or your brand. They just don't know you. Down at the bottom of the funnel, they're a monthly recurring donor visiting your website all the time. This is our kind of happy path, is that we drive people from never knowing about you to becoming a monthly donor, visiting your website all the time. And there's steps to this funnel. So we can watch when someone moves from never heard of you to seeing a Google Meta or Bing ad. We can see, we don't know their name yet. We don't have their email address or their mobile number, but we can see that they saw a Google ad, a Meta ad, a Bing ad. We can see when they visit your website for the first time. We can see when they spend a little bit of time. We're watching for people to spend maybe more than 30 seconds on your website. Maybe we're watching for them to visit your mid-level giving page. Maybe we're watching for a legacy plan giving activity. Okay, so we see all of this through our systems because the nice thing about digital is that we can track everything. Now, there's a note about that, which I'll share a little bit later. There's privacy on the other side of this, cookie consent, et cetera, et cetera. It's battling in our data right now. So anyway, if we have time, we'll get into that. We can see when they click a donation button. We can see when the person begins the donation sequence, but doesn't complete it. We call these abandoned checkouts. What do we do about that? We can see when they complete the donation. So I'm just trying to build the model of the funnel for you. And then I'm going to turn it over to Gillian and Kyla in just a minute. And they're going to talk about how does this work inside of an actual nonprofit trying to raise money. One of the questions people ask me all the time is how much should we spend at each level of the funnel? And of course, I'm going to say it depends. Let me look at your Google Analytics. I mean, that's really kind of how it starts. It's some organizations need to focus on the bottom of the funnel. They're spending tons of money sending traffic up to the top, and it's all just leaking out. Some organizations have a super well converting bottom of funnel. Their conversion rates are unbelievable, but they have a very small audience. And so we're always trying to battle as we're looking at funnels. Where do we lean in next? And then here's another question. Should we start at the top of the funnel or the bottom? That's one of the ones I get all the time. Generally, if I don't know you at all, I would say start at the bottom of the funnel and work your way up. That's the safest way to save donor dollars, is to start at the bottom, work your way up. That's not always the case. For more mature programs, that might not be the answer. If you spend a lot of time perfecting that conversion rate, you're testing new donation sequences, you've done some A/B testing, maybe you need to play around a little bit at the top of the funnel. Okay? Let me set up a couple of tale of two funnels for you that we will now use through the next 45 minutes or so to talk about this idea. There's a lead funnel. There's a conversion funnel. Many times I'll get to an organization and they have two different agencies if they're big. One's working on the leads, one's working on conversion. Maybe they've got two different departments in their organization. One is called the marketing comms department. One is called the fundraising annual fund department. They're two different groups of people. But what I'm going to argue is they're one big funnel, okay, if done well. We'll see this many times. We're all direct response fundraisers, or we're related to them, or we're interested in it, or otherwise you wouldn't be on this webinar. There's this big old direct mail funnel. There's this big old digital funnel. And oftentimes there are two totally different teams of people working on these things. But I think you'll see in some of the data we're going to show you is that really it's a big direct response funnel. Some people like to get mail, some people like to get email, some people like to get both. Okay, so these are two funnels that I just want to set up for you. And then finally, and I'll kind of come back to this, there's an AI first funnel and an AI last funnel. When I'm with a group of nonprofits and I'll say, hey, how many of you have policies forbidding you using AI in your organization? I get lots of hands. So I'm not saying there's one answer to this question. What I am saying is there will be some fundraising organizations that lean heavily into AI. And there will be some fundraising organizations that lean heavily against AI. Okay. So we're going to have two different funnels there too. And we'll talk about those if we have some time. So my role was really just to kind of welcome you. I really appreciate everybody being here. And I really want to thank our guests for presenting. And with that, let me turn this over to Gillian and Kyla.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us today. My name's Kyla, and I am the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications at Scarborough Health Network Foundation, based in Toronto.
And my name is Gillian, and I'm the Digital and Multi-Channel Campaigns Officer, also at the Foundation. And as Philip was saying, our Tale of Two Funnels is one of how our investment in digital did more than raise more money digitally. It was also the new territory that prompted us to think strategically in new ways and ultimately get closer to a merged funnel across all activities, not just digital. And so as such, it's a story about how by uniting our funnels, we were able to smash our fundraising goals and raise even more money across many channels, even amidst chaos.
Great. And so this is first just a little bit about Scarborough Health Network. So Scarborough Health Network is made up of 3 hospitals in Toronto. So Scarborough is a large borough of Toronto, about 25% of the total population of Toronto. And there's so much incredible diversity in Toronto. So we have 59%, or in Scarborough rather, we have 59% new Canadians. And over half of Scarborough actually speak a primary language other than English. However, with the incredible diversity, we also have some challenges that make fundraising difficult, like the lowest household income in the Greater Toronto area. And being community hospitals, we do rely a lot on community donations and donations from the people that actually use our hospitals. And you can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Next slide.
I think we're just having a technical
Oh,
difficulty.
no. Perfect. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so this is what we call our $0 map. And this was an incredible fundraising and marketing tool for us. So for those of you not based in Canada or Ontario, while in Canada we do have free healthcare, government funding doesn't cover all of the costs for healthcare. Hospitals in Ontario specifically are responsible for a portion of all capital infrastructure upgrades. So new buildings, new wings, anything like that. And then 100% of all medical equipment. And so that's where donations are really critical. And as you can see from this map, for over a decade between 2010 and 2021, Scarborough Health Network received $0 in government funding compared to all other hospitals in the Greater Toronto Area. Fortunately, this did change in 2022, and we received a big commitment from the Government of Ontario. But while that was amazing, it didn't change that the past, and the reality was that we were playing a big game of catch up for our peers to be able to ensure our hospitals were upgraded and modern for our community. And so we were facing immense inequities in both funding and in donations. And we knew that this wasn't fair to our community who relied on us. And it forced us to do something to change that. And you can go to the next slide. And Philip, I did add a video last minute, so hopefully it works. Nothing like throwing a curveball at the last minute.
Dear Toronto, when will we all be treated equally? Because right now, the newest Canadians are in the oldest hospitals. The city's most diverse area is also our most ignored. And although we make up more than 25% of the population, we get less than 1% of the hospital donations. How is that equal healthcare? We need you to back us up.
Because Toronto isn't Toronto without us.
So that was our, that's what we did to try to change our future based and not based on our past. So we launched the Love Scarborough campaign in January of 2022. This was the first chapter, the first spot of the campaign. This was the first time that we had ever done a mass marketing campaign. So as you can see on this slide, we had obviously the TV spot, we had out of home, radio, a lot of earned media. And it was an open letter to Toronto, Dear Toronto, Love Scarborough, asking some hard-hitting questions about why, we weren't kind of on equal footing as the rest of the hospitals in the Toronto area. And the objective of this campaign was to raise awareness of our challenges and get people to just take notice of us. And it worked. So we really captured lightning in a bottle with this campaign and saw not only an immense increase in awareness and share of voice in the marketplace, but it significantly impacted our fundraising across the board. At Scarborough Health Network, we are pretty heavy major gift shop, and this did help bring in larger and transformational gifts, but it also had an impact on our online gifts. So while the main objective of the campaign wasn't, donations, it did drive traffic and mass awareness, providing that halo effect on all of our existing fundraising activities. And as you can see here, when we launched Love Scarborough, our yearly revenue did increase. And then it also did have a lift in our annual revenue and our online gifts. So it had a 16% lift in our number of online gifts, 82% increase in the online revenue, and 23% increase in the average gift amount online. And this was even after we saw a significant uptick after the COVID-19 pandemic, when we saw a really big rise in online gifts and donations being in the healthcare sector. And then what this chart doesn't include is the completion of this past fiscal year of 2024-2025, which has actually been even our most successful year to date, even above and beyond what these past few years were.
So Kyla was saying, Love Scarborough was highly successful, but the rapid growth it created sometimes caused growing pains. The success, and maybe the surprise of it, the scale of the success, led to a divide in the organization's identity. Essentially, just the organizational identity was evolving faster than our structures and our team ourselves. And so you can really see that clear divide in the materials that were being created at the time. On the left, as Kyla was saying, coming out of the Marcom team, there was that sort of gritty, new, bold look, whereas on the right, this was the annual funding program. And so it had that more traditional kind of white space sort of look about it. And while they're both beautiful, they look totally separate. It probably felt like we had two totally different voices coming out of our organization, or if you were on the receiving end, as if two totally separate organizations were speaking to you, which was likely very confusing. So despite this brand success, our siloed internal teams and our siloed funnels and the way that we were visualizing materials really kept us separate. And so as a result, we feel that perhaps while Love Scarborough brought in this new audience and expanded our reach and expanded our fundraising, as Kyla was saying, maybe the internal gaps meant that we weren't fully capitalizing on the momentum as much as we could be throughout the entire funnel. But what we're here to talk about today is how we've bridged some of those gaps and how that's been critical to raising more money and sorting more donors throughout the funnel. And so we wanted to highlight the team's strengths and just to give a bit of context and show how the successes of the campaign highlighted that while our teams were individually really, really strong, we weren't working together cohesively.
Yeah, and so our kind of, tale of two funnels, as Philip mentioned, are really our marketing and our annual funnels, because we are two separate teams here at SHN Foundation. And so the strengths on the marketing side are obviously, this lightning in a bottle we captured with the Love Scarborough campaign from an awareness perspective. It was the first time we were really part of the big conversation amongst a lot of big hospitals and a lot of big foundations here in Toronto. We were kind of, playing up with the big boys of hospital fundraising. Those of you based in Toronto and the area probably know off the top of your head some of the ones that I'm talking about, and we built a lot of brand equity, but as Gillian mentioned, it was a brand new brand to us, and so that was kind of a bit of a weakness as well. We didn't really know how to integrate it into these traditional fundraising materials when this was so different from anything that we'd ever done, and because a lot of it was mass marketing, we were unable to track true ROI when it came to donations and conversions, which led to us not really being able to focus a lot on digital conversion because we couldn't directly attribute anything to the mass marketing efforts. We could obviously assume and think that, the halo effect provided by the mass marketing efforts were having an effect on the fundraising, which we are confident that it did, but there was nothing that we could attribute. So again, as an opportunity, and one thing that we're starting to explore now, and what we have been doing is improving our integration specifically with the annual program to make that brand equity thread through all of our materials, and also incorporating impression attributes to our ongoing digital campaigns to be able to put more ROI on the efforts of the Love Scarborough campaign.
But on the flip, on the annual program side, we were kind of doing the bottom of the funnel really well. We had this really natural base in hospital fundraising, people who were warm donors who consistently supported the Scarborough community, or past patients who were seeing the need up close and personal. But sometimes our really deep familiarity with this audience meant that we were holding on to longstanding assumptions about who they were and how they wanted to be engaged with. And so when Love Scarborough offered us this huge new audience and opportunity, we were challenged to rethink and expand our approach while continuing to honor that trust of that trusted core donor group. And as Philip said earlier, this was an especially critical opportunity for us because, as like many of you, I'm sure, we were experiencing softening acquisition performance using traditional methods. And so Love Scarborough gave us this new audience, but it also pulled back the curtain on the problems that we were having. And no more did this problem translate than our increasing focus on digital. Traditionally, there were some separations between our team. AP lived in the world of direct marketing, direct mail rather, and Marcom was really living in the mass side of things. And so when Love Scarborough made us recognizable to more AP audiences, and also just because of the times, it was the 2020s at this point, there was an increasing focus on digital between our two teams. And while that presented a bunch of new opportunities, it also meant that suddenly we were working in the same territory. We were cannibalizing each other's digital spend, we were splitting email lists, and we were debating over vendors. But plus there were also bigger questions that we were discussing, like what is digital even for? And so it was in this avenue where our problems started to bubble up, and that's when we brought in outside help in the form of STella. We brought them in, our leadership brought them in to audit and wrangle our digital strategy, and it really couldn't have come at a better time because we didn't know it yet, but on the horizon was a looming postal strike, as well as just other giving season chaos. And it meant that our efforts to evolve more into a digital first organization would be more critical than we could have realized at the time. And with that was the first recommendation to fix our donor platform. So you can see here, we've got a before and an after. I'm pretty clear which is the after picture. With Stella's help, we came with a new vendor, Fundraise Up, and that became our first sort of intentional digital exercise together as two teams and two parts of the funnel. And it also had two-pronged benefits. The first are really clear, they're very practical. The form is better for users, it's clean, it's usable, it's secure, and so therefore it's better for conversion. It also improved like the backend for us in terms of how glanceable the data was. Instead of having to dive deep into our razor's edge, we suddenly had data-driven decisions that were available and regular to us. It expanded our ability to do that on the fly and work in real time. But the benefits were also really emotional. This implementation let us work together as a working group to implement a tool with donor well-being at its center. And that really helped us build out our internal collaboration structures. And it reminded us of our shared goals, which were to raise money for a cause that we care about and to do so in a sustainable way. And both this exercise and also the platform itself were critical for our best giving year yet, as Kyla said. We implemented Fundraise Up right before our busy season and right before the postal strike. And so while we can't say that Fundraise Up is the core reason for our best year to date, there was a lot that went into it. It's really not hard to draw a line that when donors were pushed online away from their more traditional method of giving, like reply coupons, being met with an easy to use solution probably mitigated the worst of the postal strike's effects and maybe even created new digital donors for life. But that being said, this is not a story about a perfect integration of two funnels, and it definitely had hitches. Fundraise Up was the early days, and nothing tells that story about integrating in some of the hardship that comes with that than our Giving Tuesday campaigns last year. I'll let Kyla speak a little bit about it, but essentially we ran two separate campaigns at the same time, much to Stella's dismay, and that was our Bet on Us campaign and our traditional campaign.
Yeah, so Giving Tuesday last year, our marketing team kind of wanted to do something big and splashy to try and mimic the success of Love Scarborough and really try to break through the clutter of what was becoming an increasingly busy Giving Tuesday landscape. Those of you, I'm sure who were active during Giving Tuesday last year, I think every single nonprofit that I followed online or came across online had some sort of digital campaign. So the competition was high this past year. And so we put forward a fun idea to kind of use sports betting to gamify donations, which we called Bet on Us. It was a tongue-in-cheek campaign based on the idea that whenever Toronto-born rapper Drake bets on a team for a big game, that team usually loses, with the most recent unfortunate example being the Maple Leafs, who lost Game 7 on the weekend after he bet on them to win. And there are lots of other examples in his history. So we kind of use this as a jumping off point to make something fun where we invited people to quote unquote bet on a sure thing by donating to Scarborough hospitals, not a real bet, just a donation. But the idea being to, help break the Drake curse by betting on a sure thing by investing in our hospitals. And the objective of this campaign was to, like I said, break through the clutter to raise awareness and donations. And we achieved the first goal of raising awareness. We drove significant traffic and got millions of earned media impressions through that campaign.
But at the same time, our two different teams were running two separate campaigns. The bottom of the funnel team, the annual program, wanted to run something that was tried and tested with our donors. They wanted to keep it really traditional. So you can see on the screen some of the more like warm and fuzzy sort of hospital images. And that was a hallmark of the annual program traditional campaign. We just really wanted to stick with the science of working with our loyal donor base. And in the end, our two teams could not be dissuaded. And we ran two campaigns. And in the end, the result were that we sold both of those campaigns short. And we probably left money on the table.
Yeah, so while Bet on Us made a splashy impression, especially when it came to getting in front of new audiences and getting some new donors, it did not translate to donations on the bottom line.
And traditional campaign, it broke fundraising records, which was key at this critical giving time, but perhaps it was winning the battle and not the war. It sat largely within the structures of what we were doing before, and it converted traditional donors. And other times of years, it would have perhaps missed the opportunity to try new things and expand into new audiences, including what Love Scarborough possibly carved out for us. And so in the end, we sold both campaigns short. We split the email lists for both, meaning that traditional messaging didn't get the full juice that it could have had at the giving season. And Bet on Us was hamstringed by a small audience and limited to a conversion KPI, given the time of year that it was. But it meant that Bet on Us could never really show its potential for other activities like lead generation or awareness at other times of year.
Yeah, so biggest lesson that we learned during this was that there's a time and place for mass that is something, new, splashy, and different. But it's not during giving season when people are used to seeing certain things and certain messaging. And even though it wasn't the full success we were hoping for from a donation perspective for the Bet on Us campaign, the experience of Gillian's team and my team working together in this digital realm alongside Stella for the first time so closely did help us develop a stronger sense of collaboration and a deeper understanding of how our separate KPIs and objectives actually work together and complement each other. Helped us understand how we can better work together to support each other's campaigns rather than kind of working against each other in the marketplace with separate campaigns, cannibalizing each other's spend, confusing our audiences with different messaging. And then because of that experience, we are working a lot better now, through all of our channels, including better incorporating the Love Scarborough branding into direct mail, and really just overall collaborating more on all of our digital activities. Which brings me to the next slide, which this just again kind of bolsters what we learned during this period, especially when it comes to digital. Any marketing professionals here will likely be familiar with the chart on the left. This is from Binet and Field, focus on balancing short and long-term marketing strategies. So it basically shows that the two main marketing mechanisms of an organization, brand building, which is the red line there, and sales activation, the yellow spiked line, work in very different ways. And have different implications on brands. So the red line, the brand building, is about developing that emotional, compelling message that over time creates a connection. And that's what we do on the marketing team and through Love Scarborough. And then activation is that yellow line. So those sales activities that happen, they're offer-based and focus on current customers. And this is where we see peaks during specific giving times. And basically, successful brands need both of these activities to thrive, to increase their revenue over time. And the issue is achieving the right balance between these two activities and the right budget, as Philip mentioned in the beginning. How much do you spend on each activity? And in nonprofit, we are typically discouraged from spending a lot on brand building, but we know that, marketing best practices is that you have to invest in that for your long-term revenue goals. But what we found working so closely together with, quote unquote, sales on the AP side and brand building on the marketing side is we've kind of have this new chart that I've updated on the right, where the teal line is now getting higher and higher each time alongside that brand building, with our bursts getting higher and not dropping off as steeply in between those specifically, solicitation ask campaigns. And so the brand building, gets those donors in the funnel, and then in giving season, the annual team seals the deal, makes those asks to what is now a warm audience instead of just trying to blast everything to everyone without kind of warming them up in the funnel. So through the chaos that was our giving season last year, we realized that our internal structure and internal challenges were kind of impacting the donor experience. Like Gillian mentioned, they were getting different messages, different tones, different visuals. That was confusing to the audience, both existing donors and potential new donors, because our internal structures were kind of siloed and we had our two different funnels. It meant a disjointed experience for our donors. So by working through this chaos together, we're kind of now increasingly running with this graph on the right, and having a better, collaborative, more recognizable presence in the digital world by having everything kind of look similar with a similar message and tone of voice.
So now what? It's unlikely to go off without a hitch, but we're really lucky at SHN Foundation to be in this rare place that we're bucking fundraising trends. I know it's mainly Canadians in the chat today, so I'm sure most of us will be familiar with this chart, but this is a StatsCan chart that shows that we're seeing the number of donating Canadians dropping while the average gift is getting bigger thanks to major gifts domination of the pie chart. But we're going against the grain, in part because of the opportunity that digital has given us to integrate the funnel and work more closely together as two teams. As Kyla was saying, Annual has the experience in converting donors and building those warm relations at the bottom of the funnel, whereas Love Scarborough is opening the door to new audiences. And so together we're learning how to leverage these two pieces together. In this experience, we've already seen a little bit about what a cohesive donor experience and a consistent voice can do, especially on digital, which can already be so chaotic with so many competing draws on the attention. And we're really excited to tackle the rest of our internal structures that keep us apart and do the ongoing work on digital roles and responsibilities between that two teams so we can work really cohesively together. And so hopefully we're going to continue and accelerate this trend for SHN Foundation, especially as we get more experience and intentional about creating a donor experience that guides the audience through a coherent, unified funnel and doesn't feel chaotic when the rest of the world does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gillian and Kyla. And I'll echo one of the comments I had earlier. Can you believe they pay me to work with people like Gillian and Kyla? I mean, it's a wonderful thing to come to an organization that's so open-minded to trying new things, and that's what we have here with this case study. Okay, so if that's not enough, let me introduce to you Jasonea Shockey. Jasonea, are you online? Can you hear?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Is everything good?
Everything's good.
All right, I'm gonna let you take it away. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
And then you just say next, and I'll forward you, okay, on the slide.
Okay, great, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jasonea Shockey. I am Director of Digital Marketing at Boys Town. I have been at Boys Town about 7.5 years, but they were my client prior to working there. I worked at an agency. So I've worked with them since about 2009. Love the mission. In my current role, I manage the digital fundraising team. So we manage the national email marketing, text messaging, paid digital advertising, along with website content and donate form management, all primarily focused on online fundraising. Personally, a little bit about me. I just celebrated my 20-year wedding anniversary in September of last year. I have 2 kids, a 15-year-old as of today is his birthday, and a 17-year-old. So most of my personal time is spent attending sports activities and show choir competitions and traveling when I can. So I'm going to kick off today with a very short video with a mission moment. So I'll let Philip take it away.
My wife and I lived in a home with 8 young men from different parts of the country. And in speaking with them, we realized that most of them had not experienced a safe and loving traditional Christmas. I remember taking one young man for a home visit. And when I went to pick him up, I had to step over a drunk family member that was on the steps and crawl through the front door because the door didn't work, but the glass was busted out. And when I went into the home was devoid of any furniture. There was no heat. And I asked him if he was ready to come back to Boys Town, and he grabbed his duffel bag and he said, "Let me say goodbye to my mom." So he went into another room. With her in that room was a gentleman that this young man didn't know, and they were doing drugs. and he went to kiss his mother goodbye. He went to kiss his mother goodbye, and he bent down, and she looked up at him, and she had really glassy eyes, and she slurred, "Now, who are you again?" to her son. And he looked at me and said, "I'm ready to go back to Boys Town." That's why Christmas, that's why Christmas is important to these young men. There are thousands of those stories, all the way dating back to Father Flanagan. What we do here is critical. It's not just life-changing, it's life-saving.
Guys, I've seen
My
that
wife
video
and I live
probably 1,000 times, and I still get choked up. Scott is obviously an amazing storyteller. What I love about this story is it provides a very real picture of the hardships that the kids and families that we are serving experience. And it just kind of reminds me why what I do is so important to fundraise for these important causes, so we can help more kids and families. And I just want to echo Philip's story about the AI video or AI photo story earlier this week. We've been playing a little bit with AI photos lately. We have, because of the sensitivity of a lot of our clients that we work with, we do have to use stock photos for some of our campaigns. And so we've been testing AI, and I don't know if you guys have tested it, but we have found that sometimes AI brings back a few extra fingers in their photos. So make sure that you count and check for that if you are using AI photos. So a little bit more about Boys Town. So if you have even heard of Boys Town, which many of you probably haven't, unfortunately, this is what a lot of people think of when they first think of Boys Town. We were founded over 100 years ago by an Irish Catholic priest, Father Flanagan. He's currently up for sainthood. The bottom right photo are the first 5 boys that he helped in when he brought them into his residential program. The top is representative of an iconic story that Father Flanagan told of a young boy living in his home that had polio. And so the other boys had to help carry him up and down the steps. And one day, Father Flanagan asked one of the boys carrying, "Isn't that difficult?" This is where I would pull the audience and ask, but to which he responded, "He ain't heavy, Father, he's my brother," which is a phrase that we still teach you today to teach our kids to live a life of service. And it's also represented in our logo. The bottom photo is representative of the famous 1938 movie, Boys Town, which starred Mickey Rooney and Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy won a Oscar for Best Actor, which you can see in our Hall of History in Omaha, Nebraska, if you're ever in the area. Fun fact, we do not and never have owned the rights of this movie, so we never profited from it. Father Flanagan actually sold the rights to MGM in 1938. So lesson learned or tip, if you do a movie, don't sell the rights, because when that happened, unfortunately, a lot of people thought we made a lot of money and it really hurt our fundraising when we didn't. So next slide, Philip. So this is kind of a picture of who we are today. Residential care, which was our flagship program that we started with, is actually less than 5% of the work that we do. The majority of our youth and family services are focused on prevention, so helping families in their homes, in their communities, to give them the help and support that they need before they get into the system. We also have a 24/7 national crisis hotline that takes calls for the 988 suicide line. We also work in a lot of schools, helping with teacher training to support classroom misbehavior. We're in 28 states across the United States. We also have a national research hospital that focuses on rare and neurological diseases, and also hearing and audiology. Research is at the heart of everything that we do. Our hospital was actually started because Father Flanagan was able to connect poor hearing with bad behaviors. Another fun fact, Boys Town research is behind the standardization of the newborn hearing tests that you see in hospitals all across the United States. Next slide, Philip. So today, the 2 funnels I'm going to talk about are direct mail and digital. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is a little bit of history about transactional fundraising at Boys Town. So prior to 2017, we didn't really have much of a digital strategy in regards to fundraising. Our direct mail program was dominating our fundraising. They were doing some emails, but there was really no ask in the emails, no tracking, any of that. In fact, it was intentional for our direct mail team not to ask for money online because they were worried that if people gave online, it would cannibalize our direct mail program. We know now that that is 100% not true. It is definitely more efficient and cost effective to get a current donor to give another donation, whether that's in the same channel or a different channel, than it is to get a brand new donor. And we also have found that multi-channel donors tend to be better donors from a value perspective. In 2018, that's when I started at Boys Town. Our leadership really decided to invest in digital strategy. We needed to help offset some of the direct mail costs so all of our eggs kind of weren't in one basket. That's when we hired Next After. They helped us kick off our digital fundraising strategy. They helped us set up a temporary online donate form, set up a new email software, and many of the digital strategies that we still use today. 2020, COVID hit. Like Kyla and Gillian, we were actually very blessed during that time. Our donors continued to support us in a great way. So that was a good year for us. And then 2022 is when we started to see some more declines in our direct mail program. Costs started to go up, conversion rates started to go down. And so the pressure was really put on digital. There was already pressure that had started in 2018, but the pressure really started to increase in 2022. And then in 2024, we had some changes in leadership. Our VP of Marketing and Development retired. They decided to split our marketing and development, and we added a third tier. We hired a VP of Data Analytics, and he runs all of the transactional fundraising, so digital and direct mail. And so that's the team that I sit on. I think it's safe to say that historically, our direct mail and our digital very much worked in silos. And so bringing them together under this team, our goal is to better align and work better as a team. Philip, next slide. So I'm going to start with our direct mail program. Our strengths are, like I had said, it is a well-oiled machine. It has brought in a lot of revenue for our organization for many, many years. They have established reporting, established vendors, strategy, all the things. It is a very, very successful program. Weaknesses, of course, like I mentioned, are our recent declines in response. Opportunities, we've got new modeling, new testing with a VP of Data Analytics. There's a lot of focus on data and how we can analyze it and better use it to hit the right audience at the right time. And we're seeing some initial success with some testing that we're doing, which is really exciting. Some threats for those of you in the direct market or direct mail space, we are seeing rising costs. And then I would also add tariffs for us. Next slide, Phil. Okay, on the digital side. So strengths are, we have had some recent wins. You can see in this little screenshot. So we are also on Fundraise Up. This is a screenshot of our insights that we can see. And this is looking at October 2023 to February 2025. Those peaks are December. I don't know if anybody else's digital fundraising looks like this. My boss likes to call it the hockey stick. It's kind of flat, and then it goes up. 42% of our online revenue last year came in the month of December, which I just learned, according to the latest M&R benchmark study, is pretty on par with what most nonprofits are seeing. I hate it. It makes December really, really stressful. And my least favorite time of the year. You should see me on December 31st. I'm sitting at my computer hitting refresh on my Fundraise Up Insights tab. It's pretty sad. So one of my goals and our goals was to try and change that so that we didn't have such a flat line and then this huge spike. So in August of last year, we brought STella in and we implemented some new strategies. And you can kind of see that little hump right before December in 2024, where we added a couple of additional appeal campaigns that we hadn't done before. We had planned to do one in September. And Stella encouraged us to do an additional campaign in October so that we could kind of ramp up some of our revenue, especially since Giving Tuesday last year was in December versus November the year prior. And so I was really nervous. I did not want to do back-to-back appeal campaigns. I was really worried we were going to make our audience angry. I was really worried it was going to affect our year-end giving, but I was wrong. We did a campaign in September, and then we did a match campaign in October, and our donors respond really well to match campaigns, as I'm sure most of you have learned. And so this was a really successful strategy for us and worked really well. The other thing we did at the end of the year was we did a complete overhaul on our online spending. Like Philip said, one of the first questions we asked him was, how much should we be spending, top of funnel, bottom of the funnel, and where should we be spending our money? We were spending a lot of money at the top of the funnel. And so we scaled a lot of that back at year end, and we really focused on bottom of the funnel, just like Philip had recommended in the beginning. And so we ended up ending our year in a much better place from an ad efficiency standpoint. We had reduced our spend. We saw increased revenue. So that was a really, really great win for us. Our weakness, of course, leading into 2025 is now scale and acquisition. So we are trying to come back in and spend more money at the top of the funnel so that we can kind of feed that pipeline. And we're trying really hard to do it cost effectively, which can be difficult. We all know top of funnel is difficult from an attribution standpoint. How can we make sure that the tactics that we're using are actually feeding the pipeline and getting people to donate, which is what we ultimately want them to do. So we're still working through that. And then new donor acquisition online continues to be kind of a weakness for us that we're trying to figure out. Opportunities, new team, new tactics, new agency, lots of opportunity for growth here. Threats, I would say, are the economy. There's just a lot of uncertainty. Right now, we've been, again, pretty blessed that our donors have remained generous during this time, but we also know that things could change at any moment. And so we're really trying to push monthly giving this year so that we have that consistent, steady income in case something happens, then we kind of have that continued income. Next slide, Philip. Okay, is our direct mail driving our digital? So this seems like an obvious statement, but it was something that we kind of needed to dig into and see if we could confirm. We do not do consistent matchbacks of our online donors to our direct mail. So we do make a lot of assumptions. This is a story I'm just going to share from January of 2025. This is another screenshot from Fundraise Up. The dark blue is 2025, the gray is 2024. We started the year really strong. We were really excited. Donors continued to remain generous. We were looking great year over year. Third week of January hits and our revenue starts to drop. Every day it's kind of going down, down, down. And we're like, what in the world is happening? We're looking at kind of our email cadence last year, text cadence, what did we change? Well, what we learned is that our direct mail team had cut an acquisition piece in 2025 that they had sent in 2024. This, I think, is a perfect example of kind of how we work in silos a little bit. So we 100% had the schedule from our direct mail team. We missed this update. It was not communicated verbally. And had we known, we could have maybe had better projections and also maybe planned some different online strategies to kind of drive revenue that we knew was going to be missed. Now, at the end of the day, cutting this acquisition piece, even with the loss in online revenue, was the right decision for our organization. But I still think that if we had communicated better, we maybe wouldn't have seen that dip in online that we experienced this year versus last. So lesson learned for us. And also just another reminder of how our teams can continue to work on better communication and alignment. Next slide, Philip. Okay, this is another recent discovery. This is our online retention rate of our net new online donors. So I'm a little embarrassed to say that we have not done a great job tracking our online retention rate. Our direct mail team, on top of it, they track retention very closely and have great reporting. We just haven't really done it on online. So it's something that we started this year. We pulled this initial report, and I can say I was a little bit disheartened and concerned. 2019 to 2020, you can see we had a pretty solid retention rate. 2020, 2021, it drops, but still not too bad. And then it just continues to drop from there. So when I see 15%, we all know how hard it is to convince someone to donate to a cause for the first time. So when only 15%, when 85% of those people are not giving a second gift the following year, that's pretty sad. So we needed to dig into this and see if we could find out why people weren't giving again. So one of the things that we looked at or discovered is that sometime in those years, there was a decision made by our leadership not to send direct mail to net new online donors. I believe this decision was made in an effort to save money. And I think also the thought was to keep online donors and online communication in the channel that they came in on. One thing that they didn't take into consideration, or what I believe we're not probably aware of, was that this also included anyone who made a gift online after receiving a direct mail acquisition piece. So as we dug into this data a little bit this year, like I said, we don't do a consistent matchback of our online and direct mail, but we can do a matchback. It's a little bit fuzzy because we don't always ask for our physical address from our online donors, but our team took a look at it. This is another time when I would poll the audience and ask you if you have a guess on what percentage of our net new online donors received a direct mail piece. 50% of our direct mail donors, our net new online donors received a direct mail acquisition piece. So that means that 0% of them would be in queue to receive future direct mail pieces based on our current rules in place. So not only do these individuals, they won't receive follow-up communication in the original channel that converted them if they don't opt into email or our text messages. We have no way to communicate with them. Good news is, after discovering this, we are changing this. So we've adjusted our strategy to now ensure that all of our online donors will at least get a handful of direct mail pieces. We're not going to enroll them in our full program because we do want to be efficient with our spending, and we may not need to hit them with as many direct mail pieces as our traditional direct mail donors. But my hypothesis is our online conversion rate will improve with this change. Philip, go to the next slide. So in general, our goal this year, like I said, was to increase digital revenue and get more efficient with our ad spend to help offset some of those challenges that direct mail is facing, and also to help with that hockey stick. So building upon the lift we saw in Q3 and Q4 by adding some of those additional appeal campaigns, we've added a few more appeal campaigns in 2025 compared to what we did in 2024. So in 2024, between January and April, we did one appeal campaign. It was a very small audience. We were focused on converting one-time donors to recurring donors. And that was it. Then we didn't hit people again until May with kind of a heavy email and text appeal. This year, we did the same campaign in February with our upsell, and we added a campaign in both March and in April. And obviously, you can see by the results on the slide, we saw an 82% increase in revenue year over year from text and email. So it 100% worked for us. That big bump in March was a match campaign that we did. Again, just confirming how much match campaigns resonate with our audience. I think, again, my concern, just like last year or end of year, was always coming off of year end when we're doing all these heavy appeals, are we asking people for too much money? But the truth of the matter is we're nonprofits and it's our job to ask for money. And also, donors give when donors can give. And donors give to different asks and different appeals. And we all know that people don't give if you don't ask them to give. So it's good to ask often and give different offers. We're very strategic in who we send our appeals to. Obviously, we're not asking people to give right after they just gave a gift. So I think that helps with our response rate. But this is definitely a strategy we're going to continue throughout the year. Next slide, Philip. So where do we go from here? Obviously, we're going to, like I just said, continue to do more of what's working. We're continuing to test both in the digital and the direct mail space, specifically on the digital side, testing different channels, testing different strategies and creative and messaging to see what we can get to convert, testing different landing pages, all those things. I'm hoping we'll see some quick wins just by making sure we're communicating with people in multiple channels. And then our list models. As I said, our current leader's expertise in data modeling is a huge benefit to us. And I'm hoping that we can use some of those different models for ad efficiency and on our email targeting and our direct mail targeting to continue to see improvements that we're already starting to see. And I think that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasonea. As you can see, we have a wealth of knowledge on this webinar. And if I could, I would give all of the presenters more time, but we're going to keep moving, okay? We've got, some of you are asking if we can do questions. Let's wait till the end and see if we've got some time. We may have a little bit of time. I'm sure what Gillian, Kyla, and Jasonea have presented already are triggering tons of comments or ideas in your mind. With that, thank you, Jasonea. And I'm going to shift gears now to, let me kind of close up this part of the presentation, and then I'm going to turn it back over to, I'm going to turn it to Graeme Benning, CEO of Fundraising Direct, to talk about mobile. We're going to kind of dive in deep to mobile revenue, SMS, text, because from what I see from the analytics, you're starting to get some good lines of revenue from mobile. So let me bring it back to Charles Dickens. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And then bear with me.
As Philip and his colleagues have shown, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. For fundraisers navigating the ever-shifting digital landscape, the marketing funnel, once a straightforward path, now resembles a labyrinth where acquisition, engagement, and conversion battle against short attention spans and friction causing drop-off at every stage.
So I realized it's a little freaky. I don't know if you all are playing with HeyGen. I mean, that's one of my favorite AI platforms right now, along with ChatGPT and some of the others. But HeyGen, you can create your own avatar. You know, I can do a little video capture and then it'll have it speak for me. It makes me think about, we're not quite there because you can still tell it's AI, but imagine if I could send out little personalized video to all of my donors, just from me, telling them something about why I appreciate them. We're not there today, but we will be there soon, okay? If you start playing with these tools, you'll start to get a sense of how we will continue to personalize the donor's experience. So I think I'm going to end with this one, AI first, AI last. You can tell, listening to me a little bit, I'm kind of an AI enthusiast in that I can't believe what these computer models can do. You know, I can't believe how human the texting is. I can't believe how good the images are. The video is still a little bit freaky, but it's getting better. Really fast, it's getting better. And so I think it becomes very interesting as I watch different teams approach this opportunity challenge of AI. Are we going to embrace it? Or are we going to kind of keep it out? Okay. So I'm going to kind of just leave you with that question. I don't really have an answer for you, but I do think there's some exciting opportunities to use AI in a very effective and responsible way to create much more personalized communication with our audiences. So let me just kind of end with my funnel. I mean, this is my main picture in my mind, is that you all should have some kind of version of this funnel. And you should be able to measure it. You should be able to improve it, test it. It's not just digital, as Jasonea has shown. It's all direct response fundraising. All the channels kind of flow into this funnel. When I look at your funnel, you know, Jasonea showed you her peaks. I usually see something like this. This is January through December. I'm looking through somebody's Google Analytics. It's tracked about $1.3 million of revenue. And to Jasonea's point, you know, we get the big spikes here, Giving Tuesday and end of year. Those are the big spikes, but we can create little spikes. You know, part of our team's job is to look at your calendar and try to pop up some little, we call them tent poles. Maybe they're pup tents, maybe they're big tents, but we're trying to create some more tent poles. You know, the universities have done a fantastic job of creating, they call them giving days. They pick some random day in the calendar. It's a giving day, it's a match, and boom, the fundraising works. So I just think there's all sorts of ways to think about your funnel from this perspective to say, you know, I too with Jasonea, you know, December's nerve-wracking. Maybe it's 42, 45%. Could we just get it down to like 30%? And then, you know, we're still going to be nervous in December, but boy, it would be easier. Let's look at a slightly larger organization. Here's their Google Analytics for view. They're, you know, it's a lot of money coming through the system now for some of you. You're raising millions and millions of dollars online. And then here's this gigantic big spike on Giving Tuesday and a gigantic big spike on December 31st. And then not a lot of other spikes. So obviously we need to add a spike here. It's not so easy necessarily. And I think I would end with this. Let me summarize this part of the conversation with what is your tale of two funnels? We all have them. What are the two funnels in your organization, if combined, would add the most value to your fundraising efforts this year? And with that, I will thank you for staying with us for this first part. And now let's transition into the second part, which is going to be Graeme Benning. Let me go back one. Raising money through chaos. Graeme, are you with me? Let me stop sharing and see what happens. Graeme.
Very much with you, yes.
Welcome, Graeme. He's actually in Toronto, right next door, but we decided we'd do it this way for questions and answers if we get a chance. I don't know if we're going to have time, but let me introduce you, Graeme Benning. The reason I asked Graeme to speak today is because I am seeing in your data, when I say your data, the nonprofits who let me look at their Google Analytics and their Fundraise Up data and their Luminate Online data, I want to see what's driving the new. I'm generally seeing most nonprofits growing pretty quickly online between January and April. Okay, I'm seeing growth. The question then becomes, well, where's the growth happening? Is it email? Is it organic search? What's driving it? And you know what I'm seeing? Mobile texting is really becoming one of the themes. For many of the clients I see, mobile texting revenue has surpassed Meta, which is Facebook, Instagram, Meta ads. So that's a big deal. It's not quite to the level of Google and Bing yet, but it's above Meta. So Graeme seems to be one of the people I have met who can articulate this really well. What's going on? How should we be thinking about this? Graeme, with that, can I turn it over to you and let you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and Fundraising Direct?
You can. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Philip, for that wonderful introduction. So my name is Graeme. I'm the CEO of Fundraising Direct, and we're an agency that's been in Canada since 2011. And whilst we're predominantly active in and known for our telephone fundraising, one of the aspects that we have been quite heavily involved in since at least 2013, 2014, if not before, was how we bring across to Canada some of the learnings that we had in the UK around SMS and mobile giving in general. And I think for us, we kind of summed it up, with all our learning over the last decade or so in this kind of statement, if you will, this kind of summary of the current landscape of SMS, not just in Canada, but globally. And that's really where all organizations really should strive to communicate with their target audience through channels where your audience is most active. And the behavior change of consumers, of customers, of donors as well, has been much more mobile active. And in fact, 66% of online time is spent on a mobile device. And so you have to be where your donors and prospective donors are going to be. And that is why SMS needs to be a core part of your approach. We've found over the last decade that text messaging, it really has become an integral part of some of the most successful charity outreaches and engagement with charities all through Canada. And whether or not it's to solicit or to engage or to inform your supporters, you simply cannot ignore the fact that SMS as a platform is incredibly strong at cutting through some of the clutter that traditional channels are finding, and especially some of the challenges that the traditional channels are finding with whether it be Canada Post strikes or whether it be continually changing algorithms within social media and Google, etc. So really for us, it's asking the question, what is your SMS strategy? And I think that's the question that I want to ask you all, because fundamentally, SMS can be used tactically, but the real strength is when you embed it as part of your strategy. 10 years ago was the ideal time to develop your SMS strategy. The second best time is today. And I think that's why I want to make sure that people are thinking about how SMS can be used and follow the example of even in the not in the not-for-profit, if you can do double negative sphere, and watch how other organizations such as banks, how the hotel I was staying at last night was SMSing me with spa options. It's an incredibly flexible model that you need to make sure you're building into your overall annual giving programs. It tends to be thought of as a tactical piece. And that's one of the challenges that we found, is trying to change the behavior from this tactical thought of let's drop this on Giving Tuesday, or we're doing an event, let's increase registration by dropping an SMS. You know, there's a famous saying that I'll come to in a second, but the effectiveness of SMS as a standalone channel is sometimes hidden by the effectiveness of it as a tactical tool. And really, as we know, the often mistranslated quote from the famous Chinese general, that strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, but tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. In other words, if you're using it on a tactical basis, it can still work, but it won't ultimately become part and parcel of a strong donor engagement and solicitation as part of your annual program. And so really I want to change the thinking of SMS into something that you sit each year, and it's a component of every funnel discussion that you're talking about, whether it be how it integrates with digital, how it integrates with direct mail, how it integrates with telephone. And that's a big ask. But when we look at, you know, some of the recent results from the data we've got from 2023, that 4.5% of online revenue can be directly attributed to activity through SMS. And that's a huge chunk for something that's still only being used at a fraction of its opportunity and potential. The average donation through SMS is very comparable to digital. It's around $107. And open rates, and this is one of the big wins of SMS compared to something like email. Open rates are in the 99% range, rather than your typical email open rates of, let's say, 20 to 30% in a good year. So really, when we're looking at SMS, the first question that's often asked to me, well, how can, what kind of case uses are there for how we integrate this into our strategy? And I've touched upon a few, but this is not an exhaustive list by any means. And I've just kind of picked what I consider the top 6, if you want a better word, quick wins that you can integrate into your overarching program relatively simply. Obviously, there's the solicitation and acquisition piece, and this tends to be the first go-to piece where people want to use SMS as a tool. And it can certainly act as a standalone when it does come to very specific events. The example I used about Giving Tuesday, it's an incredibly powerful tool. And in fact, we saw, obviously, in the midst of the Canada Post strike in December, SMS was able to close some of the gap that we found was left by the absence of direct mail pieces landing and being able to be returned by donors, because it meant there was a very proactive way in which you could reach out to your donors and say, look, we haven't been able to reach you with our yearly appeal. Here's a link online where you can go and donate. So the acquisition and solicitation piece does tend to be, the one that gets the most attention. But outside of that, you can use SMS for retention pieces. You can educate your donors and look to increase the retention either through upgrading monthly donors or renewing annual one-time donors. You can talk to donors in regards to how they are, how they're considering your charity when it comes to the scope of the wider industry. There's a large amount of money being spent into finding out what your donors think and the donor behavior. And SMS is a criminally underutilized tool when it comes to both surveying and obviously asking your donors for their preferences, how they want to be communicated to in the best way. The other one is around the more creative side of things. And that's where utilizing the function that's been built to SMS and MMS, which is being able to use some of the wonderful imagery, whether it be videos or just simple pictures that you will have as part of your portfolios to be able to share with donors. And there are a number of different ways in which you can do that. And soon to be coming to the Canadian market is RCS, which I'm very happy to talk about offline with anybody that's interested. And this is currently being adopted by the Canadian carriers and is a very interactive method by which the donor can actually click through in an interactive way a message that you're sending out to them. The other one is, when you're looking at boosting channel response, boosting channel response is a great way of taking SMS and saying SMS as a standalone may not solve all my problems. What it will do is raise the response and the income from all of your other channels. And that is a grand statement to say, but fundamentally the data over the last 10 to 14 years has shown us that if you combine SMS with an existing channel and have the same messaging, the timing works well, reminding people that some activity is happening, you're increasing your market awareness of the message that has the direct solicitation or could be the core tenet of your fundraising campaign or program. And that has been the biggest surprise for us, is that the impact of SMS is relatively consistent when it comes to raising the level of all fundraising programs. And then the other one which I've put in there, which is about making sure that you're not just outbound dispatching of messages, but also providing the ability for donors to actually communicate to you back. And there's a huge piece there around programs that involve the what's called the mobile originated message. In other words, the donor actually picking up their cell phone and replying to you or sending a message to you first. The most famous of these is obviously text to donate. Text to donate is a whole subject on its own, so I'm not really going to be touching upon that today. Interestingly, I'm talking with the Mobile Giving Foundation next week. So if you tune in to the Mobile Giving Foundation next week, you'll be able to hear me talk about text to donate. But for this purposes, it's really talking about the power of mobile and SMS as a whole. We've run extensive testing over the last 10 years, and we've really determined that for a specific type of activity, and when I say that, I mean, really for us, it's around telephone fundraising, but arguably this does apply to other channels as well, is that we do find that a mobile number versus a landline number as a point of contact for a donor is 56% more valuable because of the lifetime value that you will get from the ability to add in SMS, as well as the additional seemingly contactability of a mobile number versus a landline. Mobile numbers generally on their own, even without SMS activity, perform 60 to 120% better than landline numbers when it comes to telephone fundraising. Adding the component of SMS into this, and suddenly you're seeing boosts of response rates between another 20 to 75% on top of that. So if you're doing a telephone program, and this also applies to other channels, and you engage the donors before the primary touch point or the primary solicitation, you can see that boost in your program response rates by between 20 to 75%, depending on a number of different, obviously, impacts, but that's generally the range that we see. The other piece is when we do use it for stewardship and retention and engagement, we see things like reactivation rates increasing by 15%. And for us, that's an indicator that there's a consistent level of improvement, consistent level of impact in using SMS across all of your communication styles and channels. So the big question is, what's stopping you? And I think one of the big questions is, navigating the compliance aspect of the landscape in Canada. It's different depending on the different country spheres that you're working in. But in Canada, as hopefully those of you who've done SMS are very familiar with, there is a legislation that the CRTC put into effect, which is the Canadian anti-spam legislation, which is CASL, and what they define as a commercial electronic message. And a commercial electronic message, for all intents and purposes, is an email. That's a commercial electronic message, and SMS falls into the same category. Charities, in particular, have a special set of what are called GIC exemptions. And the primary exemption from the regulations, which for CASL really center around the length of time that it's been since the interaction with let's say, a customer. There's normally a 24-month window where you're permitted to reach out to somebody that's had a relationship with you in order to talk to them and discuss them. Obviously, there are additional provincial legislations. The primary one I'm thinking of is obviously Law 25 in Quebec. But generally speaking, from a CASL perspective, that's the framework. Charities have this GIC exemption, which means if you're using SMS as a tool to solicit donations, it's the primary tool to solicit donations for the charity, there is an exemption to that window that you are allowed and you're permitted to use. The key difference and why that GIC exemption won't apply is if you're using it to further a corporate partnerships cause or product or something like that. But generally speaking, charities are not, especially in Canada, are not inclined to do that. So you're covered by those CASL exemptions. The other barrier to entry is organization reluctance. There does seem to be, from what I hear, people reluctant within a senior management level to try something like SMS because it's new. It was developed and sent out the first time from a commercial standpoint in 1992, so the late 1900s, if you want to feel old. And so this is not new technology by any means. And arguably, I think organizations are starting to find out that it can be something that has very low opt-out rates, very low complaints. You don't see the kind of pushback that you do from other channels with regards to either do not call lists or opting out of future contact. So it can be a very strong way that you can keep engaging and overcome those internal concerns around whether this is new technology that as an organization you're not particularly keen on using. The other one is around cell phone prevalence. Obviously, you can't send an SMS to a landline, but mobile phone prevalence in Canada is just simply increasing every single year. 88% of Canadians have a cell phone of some sort, and 84% of those are smartphones. And the landline percentage is dropping. In 2021, the percentage of Canadian households with a landline was 47%. So the prevalence of mobile phones is simply simply increasing year on year. And so you have to go, to my earlier point, back to where your donors are, because that is fundamentally the answer to how you reach them in the sphere where they're most active. The final one is around credibility. There is some concern, we've all had those spam messages, and there is some concern that credibility is something that we need to work on. And there are a number of very easy, quick wins you can do to make your message more credible. Number one is actually keep using the same number that you're sending messages to donors on. If you've got that continual chain, it does mean you need to mix up your messages. You can't just repeat the same message every year. There is a continual chain of messages from the same number, which is your organizational number. Put that number on your website so that if they Google that number, they land immediately on your website. Make sure that you're using the functionality to send images, to send pictures, because at least the spam messages I get, they don't have videos, they don't have messages. And then when the technology is rolled out in Canada for RCS has the ability to brand your messages. So you can have your logo appearing on the cell phone of the donor and within that message itself. So all of these add to the level of credibility. And I think the more you communicate with the donors, the more you will engender that trust and understanding that SMS is a method by which they can talk to you and you can talk to them. There are some fantastic examples of how SMS has been used, and I'm going to cover that in the session here this afternoon. But if you do want to reach out to me, I'm very happy to share that. All of the barriers to entry, none of them should be stopping you looking into SMS. How can I best provide it as a tool that can be integrated in existing current annual giving programs in order to establish the best tactical use for your platform, whether it be through a partner or whether it be through using your own inbuilt SMS platforms in-house. So the kind of 3 top points about how to get started: look at all the options for how SMS can be used. I've covered some. Again, it's not exhaustive. Decide how you want to implement that across each of those programs, each of those funnels that we were talking about. And do you want to kind of mix up things and see what falls out of the wonderful chaos that is testing and testing and testing again. And then ultimately find the right partner. If you're going to be doing SMS internally, there's some wonderful platforms you can get that you can do it internally. You can also lean on the experience of an existing partner and utilize their experience, their results, their data, what works, what doesn't work, which audiences SMS resonates with and which it doesn't. And I think that's the important one, is making sure that you're approaching this with best foot forward. Ultimately, the end piece is that SMS is more than just a simple text. If you integrate it into your overall annual program, you will be surprised how consistent the improvement will be. And it will be between 10 and 20% improvement in your income and your response rates if you are executing it in a way that is complementary, and I have to stress that word, complementary, not replacing your existing funnels, your existing outreach, and your existing channels. And that's really SMS in a nutshell. It's going from strength to strength, and we've seen really no difference in Canada as we have in any other market. And I think we really need to embrace it much more of a strategic tool rather than a tactical one. So,
Graeme, thank you. I think the audience can see why I invited you to present on this. We got lots of questions. So here's what I'm going to do. Erik from Avid AI is on his way from the airport in an Uber. So let's shift into some questions. There are questions for Graeme, and then if the audience has any questions for Gillian, Kyla, Jasonea, or me, just start putting them in the chat. We're going to move into a little Q&A, and then once we get Erik set up, ready to go, I've asked him to just do a quick demo of Avid AI, and that's how we'll end at the top of the hour. Okay, Graeme, first question from Sonia. Hi, Sonia. Question for Graeme. Can you please repeat the exemption for SMS and Castle regarding the 24-month window? Is it if SMS is your primary solicit channel or several solicit channels?
So I will go to the exact word. Thank you, Sonia. This is like you've prepped me for a wonderful additional slide I had. If you look at the exact wording on the CRTC website, you will see that they define solicitation as a very broad description of being part of a fundraising campaign. So the exemption applies to charitable organizations that are using SMS as a solicitation tool. And the example here is where the examples of where the exclusion does apply. So in other words, where Castle may not apply. A commercial electronic message that's sent on or behalf of a charity which promotes an event or sale of tickets for an event, such as a dinner, event, golf tournament, where the proceeds from that event and those sales will go towards the charity. The second one is where a registered charity sends by email, in this case, or SMS, because remember, SMS and email are interchangeable, a newsletter where ultimately it drives solicitations and isn't primarily promoting a corporate partnership. Does that make sense?
And for the non-Canadians on the call, bear with us as we get excited about Canadian privacy legislation just for a second, okay? I know we have a lot of Canadians. I'm going to shift gears with the next question. Gillian, can you come back on the screen? And Kyla, if you're still here, come back on the screen. This is a Scarborough question. The question is from Alex. With the Scarborough campaign, did you see most of your donors from that area, or were you able to engage donors across the GTA?
I can give the quick answer. I know Gillian may have more info than me, but we really did increase our radius of donors. We actually have one of our colleagues is a whiz with Tableau, which is like a system that can take data and analyze it and give it to you in cool graphs and tools to visualize it. So before we launched Love Scarborough, we were heavily concentrated in the Scarborough and surrounding areas, kind of our catchment area that our hospitals serve. But after we launched Love Scarborough, we saw over the years that radius get bigger and bigger all the way out, which I think speaks to the reach of the campaign. But also our community. A lot of people got their start in Scarborough and then maybe moved away, to start their career, have a family, what have you. And they kind of still had that pull to their Scarborough community. And so they wanted to give back. Gillian, I don't know if you've seen anything else in the annual programs, but overall, we definitely have seen a growth in the reach and the people donating from outside of our immediate area.
I would agree. It's still largely within the GTA, but we've seen a real stretch across the region.
Especially after Kyla's campaign, or Kyla's team's campaign, directed a letter to Toronto. We
started to see donations come from the downtown core in a way that was unprecedented, and we continue to see that.
All right, next question. We're going to go back to Graeme and SMS. And then others in the audience, just think of a couple of questions for Jasonea, Scarborough, or me, or Graeme. That's fine. Just kind of think of that, because we just need to buy my friend from Avid a few more minutes. Here's the question. We have a lot of donors that are so scared to make a donation online and even over the phone because of all the scams going on. Text message is also one of the ways seniors especially are falling for scams. Since a majority of our donors are seniors, how would you convince a CEO that SMS texting is something that we should do at our organization? That's a juicy one. You want to take it first, Graeme? And if anybody else has an opinion, chime in.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately for me, I've always let data lead the way. And the best way in which you can get that data is by testing. And so, if you're looking at a cohort of your audience, and it's a touchy subject with a more elderly demographic that you may have, but ultimately you test and you let the data, it could be a small test, you let the data lead the way. And I have to say, my great grandmother at 93 is sending me emoticon smiley faces. we have to be careful that we make assumptions that, you know, ultimately are not borne out by the data. Everybody in this, you know, in this virtual room needs to be cognizant that we are not the audience. We are not your audience. We know what happens behind the curtain, so to speak. So it's very dangerous to let our feelings and thoughts and biases lead the way. The best way is to test, see what actual donor behavior looks like, and then take your learnings and apply those going forward.
We have, our average donor age is mid-80s, and we just launched our text campaign a year ago in Q4, not last year, but the year prior. And I had the same hesitations about credibility and if our older demographic would respond to text messaging. And we've seen tremendous success through that channel. I think one of the cool things about texting is that when you send your mass market, if you get responses, you can respond directly one-to-one to those donors. And that helped us, I think, build credibility. And it also gave our donors a different way to communicate with us, which was a benefit. So
I mean, that's a fantastic, you know, that's fantastic to hear. And I think the US has, you know, has been ahead of the game with SMS, I'll be honest. And, you know, when I look at how SMS is utilized, you know, across the world as well, this isn't just in Canada, the way in which you communicate and the messaging you use is only building trust the more you use it. One of the issues with spam, I don't know if you've ever received a repeat spam from the same person, I've certainly not. If you're continually going out to an audience and SMS becomes a standard, well-used, well-thought, typical way in which they hear from you, that builds a huge amount of credibility and obviously offsets some of the initial fears that we may have in the industry about going out to different audiences.
Jasonea, did you already say this about the overlap between the text audience and the email audience?
I did not.
Can you just talk a little bit? I find that fascinating.
Yeah, so when we pulled our initial audience for text messaging, we pulled anybody who had given online in the last 2 years and had provided a phone number. So all existing donors. We didn't do a ton of analysis to see it initially, the overlap between email and text. We just kind of always assumed that it was the same audience. And we ran that analysis at the end of last year. And there was only a 2% overlap between the two audiences, which I was shocked to see, and also provided an opportunity for us to try to get more of our text audience onto our email list, and then also to promote texting to our email list so that they opt in that way. So we're able to use, we were already using similar content between the two, but it made us feel a lot more confident that we weren't sending people the exact same message because there's not a lot of overlap right now.
And can I add one little thing to that story? So that blew me away that it's a different audience, because I assumed it was the same audience too. And the other note that Graeme said, which was the open rate of text, the visibility of text is so much higher than email. I mean, one of the ideas that Jasonea played on is, oh my gosh, are we going to exhaust our audience with too many, adding this October match? Looking at the data, most people never see your email. I mean, that's the truth, is that you're sending a lot of email out, and most of your audience just they don't see it. It's just invisible to them. And so text is very different. They see every single text you send. And so I think those two channels increasingly seem to me to be different. They're different channels. So I just think that's interesting. Here's one. Yeah, go.
The thing about text too, to play on that, is the immediate response. So like Philip said, people see their text right away. And so when you're doing appeal campaigns in your text message, you see immediate response to your ask versus email. You know, sometimes it takes a while for that to trickle in depending on when they check their email.
Yeah, and the other one, if you're really using it in a clever way, is you're sending out an SMS to draw attention to the fact that there's an email waiting for them, and that can then subsequently increase your open rates of that email. So,
Oh, integration. Here we go. Okay, one more question, and then I'm going to turn the mic over to Erik because now he's in the office. He's online. Welcome, Erik, and he's going to take us through a little bit of an Avid AI demo. So I'll give a little context. One more question for Scarborough. Hi, Jerica. How do you make sure marketing and fundraising roles, departments were clearly defined as the two teams came together for the Love campaign and beyond, since the line can be easily blurred?
So I guess I can answer first. We never really did make those clear distinctions. I think something important about us as well is we've grown significantly since the Love Scarborough campaign launched. I've been at SHN Foundation since 2020, so for 5 years and before the Love Scarborough campaign was launched. And we were about 20 people when I started, and now we are just over 40. And so before, actually, when I first started, the annual program was under marketing communications, and then it's kind of been moved around over my 5 years here. And now it's under the philanthropy team. And so we always worked very closely together, even before the Love Scarborough campaign was launched. Our marketing communications team would support with writing for direct mail pieces, with the graphics, with the design of the mailers. So we've always worked very, very closely together. It was just kind of the launch of the Love Scarborough campaign, and specifically the digital stuff, I think was really the first time that we found that we were both kind of in the same sandbox with different objectives. And so we always worked very well together, and this was no exception. We still worked very well together. We were just trying to figure out who belonged where, whose budget goes to what digital campaigns, how do we all work within this funnel together. So I guess my, long answer to your question is we still don't really have it completely figured out. We're still figuring it out as we go. And that's, with the help of Philip and the STella team, we've kind of been trying to be better integrated and make sure that it's all working together for the betterment of our bottom line and for our donors.
I would also say that having had the opportunity in the last season to kind of learn where some of the frictions laid,
That's something we've been working on quite closely this last little bit, just in this couple of
since the financial year closed, Kyla and I spend quite a bit of time thinking back about the lessons learned, about where things went wrong, where things went really well, like what happened, and we've been documenting everything. And I think, Kyla, you would agree that as we've started to actually build out our formal processes as a team, having had this opportunity to work so closely, it's really creating more gel even further as we go into the next giving season. And we hope that they'll stay standing.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually
thanks
prompted us
everybody
to look at
for your
our.
flexibility.
Oh, sorry,
Erik,
Bill.
how was your flight?
The flight was fine. It was just lots of delays and air and weather and story.
And you got to go through customs to get to Toronto.
Customs, and then there's traffic here.
Don't forget your passport, folks. If you're going to come to Toronto, they want to see a passport. Okay. Now, having said this, let's turn the last 15, 20 minutes over. Erik, is that enough?
Great.
For you to just kind of tell us more. The reason I invited Erik to this group is because AI is clearly such a hot topic. And I showed some silly little examples of photos and videos and audio. Erik's team has been much more strategic in the use of AI. And I just thought everyone would be interested to hear what he had to say. So Erik, is that enough of a setup? Can you take it from there?
Plenty. It's a good setup. I appreciate this.
Okay, good.
And we're pivoting a little bit as well as Philip and I were just going back and forth and texting. Wanted to pivot a little bit. Yes, I am Erik Tomalis. I'm with Avid, but I am a long-time recovering fundraiser. I want to say thank you for everything that you guys have done to grow generosity in your nonprofit organizations. And I love that you guys dabbled with AI in some capacity here, because I did too. I love taking my headshot, and it's actually really legit. It's a different outfit that I'm wearing right now. It's a little bit similar, but it's actually, I Muppetize myself. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. Love to be able to spread generosity and share all the different things that's going on with technology and efficiencies, and how we have to do more with less. I'm with a new startup. It's actually, we launched publicly back in September as a tech agency serving nonprofits. But the reality is this has been inside a nonprofit agency for the last 4 years. And so we are revolutionizing on-demand technology that we're going to be able to unify and tailor and create playbooks and scaling personal engagement all in minutes to be able to help your organization grow. But at the end of the day, we all know ultimately, I'm a longtime fundraiser and I'm a donor and I'm to many organizations and I volunteer to many, is at the end of the day, giving is ultimately personal. Donors aren't numbers. They're not, it's just data. And I get tired when I'm out on the road and I'm hearing people talk about data, but what the reality is those are humans. Those are our volunteers. Those are our givers. Those are our people that are passionate about our organization. And they actually demand that personal, meaningful connection to causes that they support. It matters to them. And that the challenge that we're all seeing right now is the fact that we have all these disconnected technologies where systems aren't being integrated and they're not talking to one another. We have some of the best CRMs in the space, but the reality is not all the data is inside the CRM. We have it in our website. We have our Google ads. We have our social donation pages, and we're dealing with these blocking and tackling in silos, not only from our staff, but also from our technology. And the challenge is really we're losing donors at huge volumes. I serve on the Giving Institute board in the United States, as well as the Fundraising Effectiveness Project from the AFP. And what we're seeing all across all different levels is donors are giving less money and fewer times throughout the course of the year because it's the inappropriate asks and impersonal messaging. And so we really need to do things to get more unstuck and focus on leaning in and actually becoming more generous and connecting with our systems. And really the agencies that we have out there are limited, right? They're not being able to help everything else. And so there's really challenges there. And so what we want to do with AI and a whole host of different technologies, we want to unify that. We want to provide the clarity through the chaos and help nonprofits grow systematically over time and being able to provide that opportunity. And that's what Avid does. Believe it or not, Avid is an acronym. It stands for aggregate, visualize, identify, and deploy. And what we want to do is we want to provide that on-demand expertise with you. We were built by fundraisers for fundraisers. We're able to use the personalized campaigns and scale and cutting-edge technology, but also having that clarity. And what we're going to do immediately is we're going to get all of that data together in one place and aggregate it so that you can visualize it all in one specific spot. Start creating those entire donor journeys and experiences and whatever it might be, and help you identify what that key audience would be, right? And I love using an example a lot is think through the idea of the lie bunts, right? Last year, but not this year. Folks that have not given last year, we put them in a campaign, and then when they do give, we have to manually exclude them so that we can have correct ad dollars going to the right place or whatever it might be. And that's what Avid does. It be able to help that deploy and create that segmentation. But at the end of the day, it was built in an agency and it was built by Fundraise. So there's over 650 million donor interaction experiments that have taken place within this platform. And really, it's a modern interface to be able to go through, but you can now see immediately exactly what's going on with your organization in minutes. Multiple integrations. There's no competitor to Avid. We work with everybody. We're friends with everybody, agencies, technologists, everything else, and we're continuing to grow all those different areas. But it's fun to walk you through it all. But I'm gonna walk through a little high level version of it, to be fair, because I think it's a lot easier to see it. I'm just gonna double check. You can see my screen onto my Google. So what I love about Avid is when you first get into this website in our interface, you're able to see how my program already does on a regular basis, immediate data. Because what happens is when we go into our system, and I'm going to be real quick on this, and I'd love to be able to follow up and have some conversations with folks that if they're interested. The opportunity is we systemize, integrate every single source of truth within the platform. And then what's even more unique is the fact that I'm a former face-to-face fundraiser. I've made a little over 5,000 donor visits in my career, managing nonprofit organizations. And what's important to me as a fundraiser is the mid-level, the major, all the different components there. I'm not a fan of general. I don't really care about digital. I'm not getting anything from phone. But what this does is it prioritizes what's important to me. And so there's a lot of great visualization tools out there, and being able to see it's all the same thing over and over again. But what happens is we're utilizing AI in the fact that these top 5 insights, will dynamically change based on the user's preferences. So these are hand raisers. These are things that we need to be worried about based on my background as a face-to-face fundraiser. And in this example, what we see is that donors recently lapsed are up about 149%. And we're using charts and graphs and some really good data points here, but I love making the joke that roughly 50% of people know how to actually define what a chart looks like. And so we're utilizing AI to actually define what this means. So we saw 149 increase, but we reached 179 donors. 3-year change is notable with 17,000% increase year over 3 years. So these are very important. As well as we have hundreds and hundreds of reports that live in here because this was built in an agency. So you can now start seeing everything about your different channel overview, your giving level overview, your different campaigns, your journeys, and it goes on and on and on. But what's great about it is if I was sitting in the chair running my nonprofit organization, I would automatically go into this program performance. I'd want to see what is the most important thing when it goes to overall performance. And the top part is, how much revenue was generated by our program. And really, what does it mean, right? Like we now have AI in here, but the system keeps going deeper. And so now we use definitions of what the active donors look like, our number of gifts, our gift frequency, what the revenue by month, and all the different components. And it keeps going and going and going. And if it's too much information, we have the key takeaways on the bottom, which are, too long, didn't read. These are the key takeaways I want to identify. And it says like revenue for giving level, major donors is showing that it's decreased significantly by 72%. Or a general channel. And really the general channel is now making me want to think through what's going on here. Why are we growing 147%? So let's explore. Let's go down this rabbit hole and see what exactly is going on with our organization, specifically in the general channel. And as you can see, you can go left to right as well. Now, instead of just looking at revenue, we want to look at donors. We want to look at actual gifts. We actually want to build out goal tracking. The ability to be able to see everything all in one spot is important. And one of my favorites is not in this demo, it's in another. Let's go to Scott's Tots for a second. We're going to pivot. Was the fact that when I was running I was chief development officer and marketing officer for my nonprofit organization. And when as a marketing officer, all we cared about was clicks and likes and opens. But the reality is I wanted to see the blend of both information. And so what does that mean is I want to see who's opening our email, but I also want to understand what donor segment are they in. Because honestly, the most important ones are our actual donors giving and that are opening from our information. And so now you can be able to see all of that information all in one spot. And that's the aggregate and the visualize as well as the identify. But what's most unique about all of this is when you go into any one of these charts and you see explore, now we can identify and go deep into that one single audience and now direct content directly to this individual audience. So I got to go to a different chart. Yeah, let's go back to that chart. So when you go back into the main chart and be able to see the explore, now we can actually push audience directly there. So we found them, we're going to confirm this pathway. And what's nice about it is we're identifying an audience now, and we said, all right, we want to push it directly to Facebook. Now we've identified 85,000 contacts in this specific audience and we can push it out. Or if we want to create an audience in our MailChimp or Google Ads or LinkedIn, whatever the heart desires, you have the ability to do that. And the system also has the ability to be able to create content. This isn't just OpenAI. This isn't just ChatGPT. This is actual fundraiser knowledge that is proven successful year over year through those 650 million experiments. So now you can actually build out a back-to-school fundraiser, and inside it, the entire program actually creates every single one of your ads, your paid media ads, your Facebook, your email, your text messaging, all the different components for you to be able to push out directly to the right audience. And this is all great. Everything in here is impactful and important for an organization. But at the end of the day, we just want to know, are we doing a good job? And so us as fundraisers, we really need to judge ourselves based on 5 key metrics, which is retention, acquisition, reactivation, upgrade, and awareness. And you can see just in this little demo environment, we have 2 stars here in acquisition. We're not doing great. We're good. We're not great. But overall, we're amazing. And so now what if we just increase the budget by 10% to acquisition? What does that do for our forecast? What does that do for our next 3 years? how much does that have an impact on our number of donors or our revenue for our organization if we just change something today? And a lot of nonprofits, we struggle with year-over-year budgets, but this gives us the tool to act like a for-profit business to be able to move forward. And finally, and I'll wrap it up here, one of my favorite things that we do, and this is free, 100% free, and I would love to be able to, share this with everybody, but we have a benchmark tool. I mentioned I'm on the Giving Institute and on the FEP boards. Those are great data points, but those are all old. FEP is looking at about 5 months old, and then Giving USA is looking about 6 to 18 months old of like what's going on in the sector. This is live data. And so if this is, I say it's free, but if you attach your CRM to this data set, you get access to see it. It's kind of like a co-op kind of mindset of like you share, you see kind of mindset. Currently, we have 116 organizations, but this is live. It's live. You can break it down by vertical. You can break it down by annual revenue. And what's the most unique thing about this, not only is it live, but it's also in your language. When you're looking at other benchmark tools and FEP stuff, it's always in the larger aggregate information. What this system does is identify what you define a major donor. If you define a major donor at $5,000, it's going to benchmark against the $5,000 threshold for major donors. And now you can be able to see all the different information here live and in seconds. So all the stuff that's been going on in the last month or two in the government, you're able to see it immediately. And I'll close with this, and I think this is one of my favorite pieces of it all. Every single one of these reports has that generate slides button. So when you have to be required to respond to your leadership of saying, hey, what is going on in the industry? I want to be able to present it. And this has created 42 slides just in a matter of seconds that is live right now. You can be able to see all this information. This would be in your logo, your brand, your organization, brand colors, everything it is. And like I said, it is in every single one of these dashboards and insights is the being able to build out your entire presentation. Philip, how'd I do? Real quick, on the spot.
Way to go, Erik. I mean, that's it. Just land and present. I mean, that's the key thing. And I know for the audience, it's kind of like trying to get a drink.
It's a lot. It's a lot in 10 minutes too. It's a lot.
It's trying to get a drink out of the fire hose. The way I relate to this, see my new little smart ring? I don't know how many of you have a smart ring or a smart watch or something like this.
Yeah.
These devices link up to systems. I'm using Samsung. It's called Samsung Health, whatever. There's the Aura ring, and it shows me my overall health score. It says your overall energy score today is this. I feel like what you all are building is that for a nonprofit. You know what I mean?
1000%.
What is that health score? What's it based on? Let me double click. Let me get inside of there. I love that. I love that piece right there, which is how are we doing today? What are the areas that need attention, and what are the areas where we're doing really well?
Yep. And it's hard because I serve on a board. I was in a board meeting last night in my local community, and they're struggling on fundraising, and they're having some issues. They got to make some cuts. And they're using Avid, and she's like, we're going to have to decrease acquisition down to 30%. And look at what it does for the future. And that's not, as a board member, I'm not a fan of this because I have to look ahead, but we as fundraisers, all we need to do is we're focused on our day to day. And that's what I love about the scorecard.
Well, thank you, Erik. I really appreciate you just dropping in and just laying it down like that. Okay, so let me close us. Thank you for all of you who've stayed from the beginning. This is now the end of the second hour. Let me just share the closing slides here. Let's do this. I'll just share my screen and see what happens. Boom, boom, boom. I just want to thank all of our presenters, Jasonea, Gillian, Kyla, Graeme, Erik. Thank you so much for just giving us tons of content. I wish we could go for 3 hours, but we can't. We got to wrap it up. For those of you who are in the Toronto area, we are going to shift gears now, and there are a bunch of appetizers, and we're going to kind of do this in person now from about 1:30 until about 5:30. So if you're around, I put a little link to the RSVP in the chat. So please come last minute and just join us. We would love that. If you like these online formats, we've got this summer series going on. So June 12th, AI, a fundraiser's practical guide to delivered by Stella and ST. So take a look at that one. There's another webinar June 26th that I'm going to do with Jess, who is still probably on the line, in M&R. Several times we've mentioned the M&R benchmarks. They're some of the best digital fundraising benchmarks out there. To Erik's point, they're always a year in review. So we're going to be looking at the 2024 data and what the changes were in that with one of the team of M&R. So those are 2 upcoming webinars, but I just want to thank everybody for attending today. I hope it was worth your time. If you want to get the recording, just send us a note. We'll get it to you. And with that, I will say thanks and enjoy the rest of the day.